There have been many horror films that present isolation as a visual character. Alien, The Blair Witch Project, The Shining, and The Descent are just a few that come to mind. For me, the film that took me out of my comfortable suburban childhood upbringing and into a nightmare of cold weather paranoia was 1982's The Thing by John Carpenter. Because if Alien taught me that in space no one can hear you scream, then The Thing taught me that in an isolated research station in the Antarctic, a scream meant something much more than a cry for help.
Hello everyone, my name is Dennis Cahlo. I'm a photographer and a filmmaker. I'm not a critic, I'm not a scholar, I'm certainly not an expert. However, I am a dude that loves talking about horror films, and I love talking to you about horror films. The first thing I want to talk about is you guys. You guys have been amazing. I can't believe how awesome just the outpouring has been about this channel. The comments, the subscribers, the amount of views that it's been getting. It's pretty amazing. I'm blown away, and I'm very appreciative, and I'm really appreciative of the support. So grab a cup of coffee that's hot. I have mine right here. Grab a hoodie, grab a cardigan, grab a blanket, put it on the fireplace, because we are talking cold weather horror, because right now it's the perfect time. I'm doing this in November, and where I live in upstate New York is getting pretty cold. It's starting to get cold. And that reminds me of my favorite films, or some of my favorite films. And my favorite genre of horror is cold weather horror, because not only do you have the threat of, something supernatural or aliens or anything coming at you, you also have the threat of isolation. And that adds something on the layer cake of horror that really speaks to me. And, we have tons of movies that address this. I mean, the standout would be The Shining, right? Everyone cites The Shining. It's a perfect cold weather horror movie. But there are also ones like most recently The Strings. I think that's one of the most underrated horror films, and that really, really is a great cold weather horror film. So if you have a chance to check it out, please check it out. I believe it's on Shudder. There's also books like Dead White, Snow, and Clowns. That's all I'm going to say about Dead White, but go find that book. But really, to me, the movie that perfectly encapsulates the isolation and the terror and dread of being lost in the cold or alone in the cold is 1982's The Thing by John Carpenter. There's really no denying that John Carpenter owned indie genre film from the early 70s up until 1982. His low-budget home runs included Halloween, The Fog, Escape from New York, and Assault on Precinct 13, which bears a striking resemblance to our main subject in today's video. Carpenter truly had a knack for pumping out low-budget films that made more than their money back at the box office, with 1981's Escape from New York bringing in a whopping $25.2 million off of a $6 million budget. This was very attractive to the bigger studios, and they caught on that Carpenter could probably turn into a cash cow for them if they got him on their side. So Universal scooped Carpenter up and asked him if he would like to tackle a project that had been in script development hell for some time. A remake of the classic The Thing from Another World, adapted from the John W. Campbell novella Who Goes There. The script had been bounced between several notable writers, including Tobe Hooper, who had set it underwater, and a very faithful adaptation treatment by William F. Nolan. Originally, Carpenter was reticent to take The Thing on, as he didn't want this to be his first outing as a studio director, but ultimately decided to because this was his big break. The script Carpenter truly fell in love with was by Bill Lancaster, son of legend Burt Lancaster, because it appealed to Carpenter's most loved of character types: tough-talking men in a hostile situation. And much like the aforementioned Assault on Precinct 13, this film isolates those men in one location in an unforgettable standoff. Now, in my eyes, The Thing is a masterpiece. You can debate that, you can disagree with me, and feel free in the comments, tell me I'm wrong. And I think it's one of the most perfect movies ever made. The pacing, the tone, the cinematography, the atmosphere, it's all A+. But one of the greatest things that this film has to offer is its ensemble cast. McCready, 35, helicopter pilot, likes chess, hates the cold, the pay is good. Gary, 46, the station manager, stiff, ex-army officer, wears a handgun.
Childs, 33, 6'4", 250, black, a mechanic, can be jolly, but don't mess. Blair, 50, senior biologist, edgy, inquisitive, overworked. Fuchs, 25, sensitive, intelligent, unassuming, an assistant biologist. Dr. Cooper, 45, professional, a decent man, a good doctor. Palmer, 27, second-string chopper pilot, crack mechanic. Knowles, 22, the cook, bright, black, irreverent, but kind-hearted, roller skates. Norris, 44, stocky, rugged-looking, a geophysicist, an incipient heart condition. Bennings, 38, a meteorologist, dutiful, an old pro. Clark, 24, the dog handler, likes it here, good at his job. Sanchez, aka Windows, the radio operator, hates it here, lousy at his job.
Okay, so how could you not absolutely fall in love with that? It says so much about each character without saying anything at all. And in just a few descriptive terms, we get all of the information we need about these guys. I feel like that in itself is a great example and a great lesson for screenwriters. You keep it simple, you keep it tight, and the characters will find themselves because you've given the actors and the director a chance to do so.
Armed with this, Carpenter and his cast were able to show exactly who all these men were without a lot of backstory or exposition. They were truly men thrown together because of a job and now have to learn how to navigate as a ragtag team in a crisis situation. Every strength and weakness is on display in an ever-growing nightmare, and each performance is as distinct and noteworthy as the characters themselves. Aside from Kurt Russell, the entire cast came from a theater background. David Clennon, who plays Palmer in the film, stated that the actors had a field day figuring out the existential dread that the men as a whole were going through. This helped to create a camaraderie both on and off screen that shines through the film because we can really feel the dynamic of each individual relationship. To prepare for the shoot, Carpenter insisted on a pricey 2-week rehearsal in an empty soundstage with the actors and crew, which helped to tighten the production, but Carpenter stated he would never rehearse like that again, as the real magic between the cast members happened on set, a certain cohesion that only happens in the moment. Wilford Brimley, who plays Dr. Blair, stated that the men really became a family on that set, and it shows in the performances. The cast was also trained in firearms, flamethrowers, and a 2-week-long rehearsal with lead dog Jed, who had never been around a crew that big. It took Jed a long time to get comfortable with the crew until he finally warmed up, and even the walk to the cage took a full month to rehearse before they actually got it right. The end result is a feeling of familiarity between these men that make you feel like you were there with them. They help to pull you in and become part of their journey like no other ensemble cast can.
Besides being infected by a shape-shifting nightmare that has the ability to shoot acidic deterrent on you or turn your head into a f***ing spider, the other creature in this film is isolation.
The theme of isolation in a horror or science fiction film is my favorite because after we as a society collectively experienced isolation and its effect on us as a whole, we now firsthand understand the psychological nightmare of being trapped and confined for long periods of time. But unlike now in modern day isolation where we can still be connected to people, in 1982 they had to rely on a CB or ham radio to do all their communication. There was no instantaneous video calls or the internet to keep these men company. They were completely cut off, relying on computer chats and paperbacks to keep them sane. All of this contributes to the claustrophobic nature of the film and the relentlessness of impending doom with no hope of rescue. Whenever I see a film like this, I think to myself, how would you be in that situation? What would be going through your mind, and what character do you relate to the most? I think that's scarier than any monster because until you are faced with it, you just don't know. And these men were slowly pitted against one another by not just fear or the threat of death, but by paranoia. Every scene is an exercise in tension building, especially the truly frightening blood test scene, in which not only do we find out MacReady is a murderer by way of trying to survive, but is a masterclass in how to build tension. With every click and squeal of the hot wire through the petri dish, I always find myself gripping onto my seat, even if I have seen the film for the 20th time. This was one of the first moments that had me questioning how to edit a scene through sound and vision to create absolute tension. And it all culminates to one of the funniest line deliveries of all time by Donald Moffat.
I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this couch!
I remember the first time I saw this film, it was probably at a friend's house, and there were so many crazy, like, gross out moments, and just like, oh, God! And that has to do with the practical effects. The practical effects in this movie are just outstanding. And Rob Bottin, who is the head of that, really shines in this film.
Rob Bottin was inspired to get into special effects by way of a steady injection of horror films and magazines like Famous Monsters of Filmland. At the tender age of 14, Bottin caught the eye of Rick Baker and was taken under his wing, subsequently having his first big break with The Howling. Bottin joined Camp Carpenter after channel favorite Dean Cundy introduced Bottin to Carpenter and worked on the effects for The Fog and ultimately The Thing. Out of the $15 million budget, the special effects of The Thing was in the $3 million ballpark. The actors have even stated that when they were on set, they couldn't tell the difference between the prosthetic dog and the real one. That was the level of artistry Bottin had at just 23 years old. All of the practicals were made of foam latex, and an ungodly amount was used to produce the molds, some stretching 4 feet tall and 8 feet in circumference. All in all, they went through about 125-gallon kits of foam latex, and not everything even made it onto the screen. There was also KY jelly, mayonnaise, and strawberry jam thrown in to create all that gooey mess we've so grown to love. The most unforgettable scene has to be Norris's chest explosion. Bottin and Charles Hallahan, the actor who portrays Norris, spent 10 days together in order to create a lifelike mold that could house the hydraulic jaws that eventually rip off Dr. Cooper's arms. The mold was so realistic that Bottin even matched Hallahan's chest hair pattern. Oh, and Dr. Cooper, who gets his arms torn off, that wasn't even him. Actor Richard Dysart, who plays Dr. Cooper, was replaced by a double amputee wearing a hyper-realistic mask and fake arms. The mask was so well done that co-stars thought the amputee was just a very good look-alike. The eventual eruption of tentacles and alien jizz took an entire shoot day, with each setup being about 10 hours apiece. Using a combination of melted chemicals and bubblegum, Bottin and team created the effect of alien insides while subsequently filling the set with noxious, flammable fumes that smelled like paint thinner. This all leads to the infamous head spider scene. This was achieved by Bottin and team creating spider legs that could be pulled through the head into the floor and then reversed. How they got the head to get its steps in for the day was by putting it on a remote control vehicle and maneuvering it with a separate set of animatronic legs. This produces one of the biggest laughs of the entire film with the famous line from Palmer,
"You gotta be kidding."
Sadly, there was an entire stop-motion finale that was eventually cut from the film because it didn't quite match the practical effects. Randall William Cook, who also did the effects for one of my favorite films, The Gate, served as the dimensional animation creator and was tasked with the big finale, which was all done with miniatures that mimicked the original set by Susan Turner. She painstakingly recreated everything, including the cans and lanterns, to make sure everything remained visually accurate and also worked with stop motion. The entire scene took 3 months to shoot and was ultimately cut because it didn't quite match what the original footage looked like. There's been some critique that the visual effects distracted from the psychological terror of the film, but I have to disagree. Carpenter, for the first time, had the budget to throw everything at you at once, and I'm so glad he did. Any scene where the effects are heavy merely adds to the terror for me because we know what this thing is capable of and why the men are fighting to not just survive, but to save the world from it infecting the entire planet.
All right, guys, you've made it to the end. Now, this is not the end because I overestimated, how much work it was to research this film. There's so much more to go. I'm hoping it's going to be a 2-parter. It might be a 3-parter. I'm not sure yet, but it certainly deserves more than 1 part. For now, I want to thank you for being here. I can't talk today. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for watching. And I want to thank everyone, including my patrons over at patreon.com/Dennis Cahlo, for helping me make these every single month. And I'll see you at the next one. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Or, well, since this is coming out in December, maybe Merry Christmas? Or I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Look, I hope you're well. And whatever holiday you celebrate, just make it great and special. And avoid goats.